And today I'm going to give a little lesson about Scrum and go over the whole framework of Scrum and try to do it in 10 minutes. Scrum is a project management methodology that's very popular right now, especially on software development, because it's a very simple protocol and it's very easy to implement, very easy to train. That's what makes it so popular. Now, Scrum, I'm going to start with the business side. On the business side, there is this group of people, and this group of people have a vision, something that they want to achieve, something that they want to develop. It starts there. It starts with the vision. And then once you have a vision, of course, you need people. People need to implement the vision. Therefore, we have in Scrum what's called a Scrum Team, and they are consisted of a product owner and a Scrum Master and the development team or the dev team. Now, the product owner is the person that's the voice of the customer. He is the one who is the interface between the developers and the Scrum team and the business. And it's his primary responsibility to first find the people for this development team, and also he's the one who's accountable for this project, and he is the one who is responsible for coming up with the features or the functionality that are needed in this product. The Scrum Master is the person who is in control of the Scrum process. He makes sure that everybody understands the process and how to follow it. And he's the enforcer of that process. He is not the project manager. That's a whole different role. Scrum Master is more servant leader, and the dev team they have control over what they do and how they do it. They're a team of people that, I can't think of the right words, but they have control over what they do instead of the Scrum Master. Now, those are the three basic roles, and it starts there. From there, we need to know what to do, and what to do is produced by the product owner. The product owner produces what is called the product backlog, and the product backlog is just a list of features or functionality, etc., that needs to be developed in this product. It's a long list. It's comprised usually of stories, or it could be comprised of tasks, but it's up to the Scrum team to decide what to put into the product backlog. And it's prioritized. And it's prioritized by business value, and the highest business value pieces go at the top, and the least amount of business value pieces go at the bottom. That's the product backlog. Next thing you need to understand is the sprints. What is a sprint? A sprint is a period of time, and at the end of the period of time, the dev team is supposed to have produced an increment of the product, something that could be moved into production and could go live with it. But it's just an increment of the product. It's not the whole product. And sprint is a period of time, so you need to decide up front how many, it's usually weeks, 1 or 2 weeks, that you want to put the limit in on your sprint. By the way, everything in Scrum is time boxed. Everything, literally. So that's what the sprint is. And the sprint is where the work gets done on the project. Now, a sprint starts, the first day is the sprint planning meeting. That's the first ceremony in the sprint process. The sprint planning meeting is 1 day or 8 hours, etc. And it's the period of time which the dev team and the Scrum Master and the product owner take a look at that backlog list. And they look at the highest priority items first and select items off of that product backlog list to work on in the upcoming sprint, the sprint that's in progress. They select those items and they produce them put them into the sprint backlog. So there's two backlogs. One's the overall backlog and one's the one just for that particular sprint. And once they're doing that, if they're moving those items, they're also in the sprint backlog adding the task underneath each item that need to be accomplished to complete that item of the sprint. And that's the planning session. It lasts one day. It's time boxed. It ends one day. That's all they get. And then at that point, they start going into their development mode, daily development mode. Now in the daily mode, they go into having daily Scrum meetings. At the beginning of every day, the dev team gets together, usually in front of the Scrum board with the Scrum Master present, sometimes the product owner present, and they go through the things. It's a time box meeting, usually about 15 minutes, and each person has just three things that they have to say. What did they do yesterday, what they're going to do today, and what are their blockers. And they take about 1 minute or so to do that, and it goes around. It's a circle meeting. It's called a stand-up meeting for a reason. They are all standing up, so it's very short, very quick. And those blockers that are mentioned become the obligation of the Scrum Master to take on and resolve. That's the daily Scrum. Now, proceeding forward in time, now we've come to the end, the last day of the sprint. And the last day of the sprint there's two meetings, 4 hours in length. First is sprint review, and the next is sprint retrospective. The sprint review is a 4-hour-long meeting where the dev team and all the stakeholders, all the business community gather together, and the dev team does a demonstration of that product increment that they developed in that sprint. And in that time, they get the feedback from the business, the stakeholders, etc. And that may create new items that need to go into the product backlog, and it's that feedback then that the dev team gets from the Scrum team gets from the community at large helps to inform the next sprint. They use that information during the next sprint to do a better version of the product. Now, going forward, that meeting is done and over with. It takes about 4 hours. The next meeting is a sprint retrospective. Sprint retrospective is just where the ideas for process improvement come out. And you have the Scrum Master and the dev team and optionally the product owner there. And here's a very important thing, leave the stakeholders out of it, leave the managers, the leadership out of it, because the things that are said, what's said in the sprint retrospective kind of needs to stay in the sprint retrospective. The people in the meeting need to be able to communicate freely and say whatever it needs to be said. And for that reason, you want to keep politics out of the meeting, so you keep the leadership, the stakeholders out of the meeting. You might have to inform those people of the results of the decisions made during that meeting, but not who said what to whom, etc. That's a sprint retrospective meeting. It's just the ideas for improving the dev team's process as it goes through each sprint. Okay, that's a quick and dirty explanation of Scrum